from the lunch break, and super excited to have Megan Zink with us, who's Senior Director of Demand Gen Marketing at ReviewTrackers. Great, Emily, just put an intro for her here. And she's going to talk about why your agency relationship is doomed, which is a topic that I'm very passionate about, having run an agency for 10 years before jumping in the SaaS world.
Yeah, well, Massimo, thank you. You have that in common with me. I have actually had agency experience, though not as long. I actually cut my teeth in marketing at a social media agency, and that was a really unique experience because that was just around the time when social media was becoming a marketing practice. And so, well,
Awesome.
I'll get into that.
I'll leave it to you, Megan. I'll just disappear 10 minutes and then 5 minutes of questions.
Awesome.
Guys, everyone who wants to ask Megan a question, just write it in the comment box.
Yes, please do. Thanks again, Massimo. Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Zink. I am the Senior Director of Demand Gen Marketing at a company called ReviewTrackers. So sharing a little bit about that, we actually were just acquired by a company called InMoment, which is a customer experience improvement platform. So we kind of make up that ecosystem. So our company actually allows you to make sense of unstructured data like reviews and customer feedback. And definitely check out the Digital Expo Hall because we have an offer for you. So definitely check that out. It's great to be here. Like I said, I have had a lot of experience in marketing. I am just a couple months shy of being in marketing for a decade. So I've been all over the place. I had a bit of a non-traditional background. I cut my teeth, like I was saying, at a social media agency. So I've got a little bit of that agency experience. So that's kind of what I'll be bringing into this talk today, is that empathetical understanding of what it's like on an agency side and why, yeah, it might be doomed. But with my optimism, it doesn't have to be. And that's what I want to talk about. Fun fact, because I was asked for a fun fact, I actually got into Milky Way photography over the pandemic. And I took my first photo in Moab, Utah. So if you want to connect with me on marketing or even photography, please find me on LinkedIn. I love talking both topics. Cool. So where does this come from? Where is this hot take? Well, basically, it comes from personal experience. So like I said, I was actually in a marketing agency beforehand. Then I went in-house and I was doing all the things. I came into ReviewTrackers as a content marketing manager and have since kind of grown with the company into Senior Director of Demand Gen. But I had to scale really fast. And I heard a lot of, well, you know, we tried to work with an agency in the past. It didn't ever work out. We didn't ever see success. You know, I had frustrations with clients, even on my side when I was working in the agency. That was a wild time. It was like drinking from the fire hose. I, was taking meetings at a card table in a co-working space. And then by the time I left after about 2 years, I was managing Potbelly social media. But that came with a lot of challenges. So understanding the frustrations with the clients on the agency side, I think that's what helped me to understand, it doesn't have to be doomed. But I think that people look at the way that we have relationships with our agencies a little bit differently than maybe they need to. So like I said, it's hard. A lot of times they don't pan out. You'll have skeptics. You'll maybe even have haters. I definitely had some, I like to try and understand where people are coming from when I get into a role. And so I did a lot of interviewing my coworkers and saying, hey, understood that you worked with an agency before, what went well, what didn't go well. And really the consensus was always, it just didn't work. And I was like, I'm not going to take that for an answer because I had to scale fast. So, with the data's not looking that great. And that's why this is a hot take, is according to the American Advertising Agency, the Association of Advertising Agencies, the Bedford Group, the average client relationship with an agency is actually decreasing, and it's decreased more than 58% over the past 30 plus years. So, back in the 80s, we were at a nice, healthy seven, maybe 7.5 years. Now we're at less than 3 years today. I think a lot of that has to do with that like very quick, rapid pace of what marketing has really become. But I think it's also that we're all approaching our agency relationships wrong. So how did I get to this point, you might ask? I needed to scale real fast. So we had some very aggressive growth goals. I have a very lean team and I needed to do a lot with a little. I oversee our agency relationships. I also oversee our content strategists, content producers. So we have 2 content strategists / producers, 2, and we publish about 3 to 4 posts a week on top of all the other things we do, case studies and everything. I oversee an automation specialist, digital channel specialist, and I also see a social media strategist. And so what we needed to do is we needed to go very, very, very fast. I knew we didn't have the bandwidth internally, and so I needed to look for other options. And despite all of the background that I got previously, agency relationships don't work, I was like, that's not good. Like, I'm not going to take that for an answer. So we are now working with an agency. We work with the agency both on PPC and SEO. And we've been working with them since, I believe, about last March. So about a year and a half on PPC, and we actually brought them on for additional SEO resources in November of last year. So it really hasn't even been that long. So I'll also tell you that patience is a virtue here. But since that time, these were some really exciting stats for me to see and to share with you. We've generated over $800,000 in pipeline for about almost $500,000 of dollars spent. So we've definitely, 1.7'd it. It's not a perfect, obviously we'd like to see that margin be more, but I think that's very encouraging. And that's also, we worked some kinks out and things like that with our own processes. We've also increased our branded keyword searches for ReviewTrackers, things like that, by 142% each. So that to me is a really good indicator that we're starting to take hold in the market. And then also increased total opportunities from organic search by 366%. That was incredible. So as you can see, this is really building my case. Like I said, I wasn't going to take no for an answer because I was like, you want me to do what with what? And I knew we had to go external. So how does that look in practice? Well, I'll tell you a couple of things that I learned. Also having that, industry insight from working at an agency, a couple of things to keep in mind. There's no rest for the weary. So to speak, there's no set it and forget it. And I think that's kind of where a lot of companies will maybe fall flat. Maybe they don't have a person dedicated to managing the relationship like it needs to be. I personally think that a lot of times when you think agency, you think of total outsource. And so, in order to really get the value, you need to be checking in on a very constant basis. I have a monthly call with our team. I'm constantly working with our revenue operations team, our sales team, our marketing team, our other marketing, we have different department, so to speak, within the marketing team, even though we're pretty lean. And so just constantly saying, okay, what's the quality of these leads? How far do they get in the sales cycle? Where are they falling off the sales cycle? Are they getting enough education? Things like that. And so again, that's my number one, because it is the most important. You cannot just say, okay, we hired an agency, they're taking care of everything. So that's number one. Number two, and this may be hard, we had to figure out a lot of workarounds, but two-way data sharing is absolutely imperative. You have to treat them like they are a part of your team. You can't just say, hey, you out in left field, we need to hit this metric and we need to bring in this much revenue. You need to tell them what is successful on your end. So we do that a couple of ways. We have figured out, it might be skittish to hand over the keys, so to speak. But if they don't know what is working for your team and getting leads to qualify, turn into opportunities, get all the way to your sales team, have success with your sales team, then they're not going to be able to attract the right people. So one of my ethos that we live and die by in marketing on the ReviewTrackers team is, well, one is work smarter, not harder. And then the second is that, you need to go to the source of the success and then work backwards. So going to where the customer is, dissecting the customer, understanding what made them win. Again, I think that we all know that as the ICP, but really it's like, I think there's a bit of a difference in marketing between the ideal ICP and the actual ICP. So make sure you're going all the way to that end of the road. And so working backwards and then sharing that data with the agency is going to really help the success with all of the efforts that you put together. We actually share on a quarterly basis a lead report and then a closed won opportunity report. So they're able to actually take all that information and they're able to connect the dots and then say, okay, we need to do more of this, less of this. The other thing that we do, and that, it's a capability that I believe everybody has. So make sure that you're utilizing this if you're doing any PPC, is to set up Google with your Salesforce data or whatever you use for your CRM and your, sales operations, because that can actually help you learn and optimize, but to a certain extent. I think we all know that technology is great to a certain extent until you've accidentally trained your Instagram algorithm to only show you pictures of dogs and people blowing up balloon animals. Personal experience. And you're like, no, I need to calibrate that. So I think, technology optimization is great, but within reason, just like agency optimization is great, but within reason. You need to constantly be checking in. Lastly, over communication and for optimization, I cannot understate that enough. The first thing, that I did was to set very, very, very clear goals with my agency, and they have been wonderful to work with. I did not take no for an answer. They were like, okay, listen, we can't guarantee this. I'm like, okay, but I need this to come out of our relationship. So how can we get to a place where we're both on the same page? We're both understanding those things, and constantly working to that. Like I said, you need to treat the agency like a member of your team. You can't just set them off and let them run. You need to tell them what your team is doing. We're constantly optimizing and creating new landing pages and new content. And it took me a while to remember, oh yeah, this might be something good to share with the agency. And in fact, something that really came out of it that was really neat was we'd sent them all of the typical landing page URLs, like to our demo, to our video, all of that, to use in advertising. But then as a team, we actually repurposed our ABM marketing that's very, very, very industry specific to a broader inbound sense. And so we were able to create industry specific landing pages with stats and customer success stories that talk to the specific industry. And, there might be a little bit of a verdict out on does industrialization matter, but I think in marketing it does, because the way you talk to your prospects, it can really, create a lot of engagement. So we repurposed all of that. And I was like, oh yeah, by the way, we're doing this initiative. Do you want to utilize this? And of course they did. And that is now our number one best performing campaign that we have. It's the industry specific one. So just a quick takeaway there is you need to constantly be evaluating what your team is doing. Is there any metric of success you can learn from that you can translate to the agency and constantly be communicating with them? So major takeaway in all of this, your agency is meant to augment your team, not replace it. I personally think that is the biggest misnomer, where agency relationships fall flat and are doomed potentially, but they don't have to be, because again, I think, talk to your team, talk to the internal structure of your team. What were the expectations of the agency? A lot of times I think people will outsource because they don't have that internal bandwidth. And that's exactly what happened to us. But I knew that we couldn't afford to just let them be off on their own. We had to let them know what we expected. We needed to constantly measure success. And I'm not going to lie, it is a lot of hand-holding, but it not in that connotation, because I think hand-holding has a bit of a negative connotation, but really it's just more, I guess, constant calibration and course correction.
Thank you, Megan. This was super useful. Actually, I completely agree. In my experience, usually two problems were dooming the relationship with the agency. Either they had no bandwidth at all, and they were considering the agency as full outsourcing. We are not going to do anything, explain you anything. Or the other problem very often was they thought they knew everything. They just needed someone to execute, and they would give us no space to give them recommendation to do our thing. So, totally agree. We are over time. Just one super quick question for you. Number one question to ask an agency when you are selecting one. How do you understand which one is the one?
Oh boy, that is hard to narrow down. But I think for me, I will say their experience in working with SaaS businesses, particularly, and understanding that they're long life cycles, they need a really specific type of education, nurture, all of that. That was a pretty important one.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan, and see you soon. Bye.
Thanks, Massimo.
Thank you, everyone. We are starting back in 3 minutes.